everyone, and welcome to the SaaS Actionable Metrics presentation. My name is Claudiu Murariu, and I'm the founder of InnoTrends. And by trade, I'm a data and a business analyst. Today, I'll be talking about the metrics that matter most for SaaS growth and how you can identify them for your own business. So, if your SaaS is in growth mode, then this presentation is for you, because it will help you identify the methods that will pinpoint the biggest growth opportunity in your data. This presentation is not for data people. It's for product managers, marketers, owners, and leadership teams, the people that make decisions on a daily basis. It will help them establish clear goals and make sure that all the teams are aligned towards them. We built our framework on top of the concept of startup metrics for pirates that Dave McClure from 500 Startups introduced many years ago. We highly recommend to watch his video where he introduces this concept. We took this concept and expanded it further together with Trevor Hatfield from Interact. So, the presentation will cover what are actionable metrics. How do you define your own product's actionable metrics? How do you align your team around them? How do you track progress? And last but not least, how you identify opportunities in your data in order to move these metrics. Actionable metrics are the most important actions that your users need to take inside your product in order to be successful and receive value from it. They are around the following 5 stages. Acquisitions, how do users find you? Activations, do users get to first value? Revenue, how do you make money? Retentions, do users come back? And referral, do users tell others? This is where the famous R pirate talk comes from. So, how do you define your actionable metrics? Well, for every single stage, we define one primary metric and multiple secondary metrics. For each of the primary metrics and secondary metrics, we came up with questions to make it very easy for you to get to define those metrics. So all you need to do is answer those questions, which are business questions, not data questions, and you'll have your primary and your secondary metrics defined. But before we go into that, let's select a real-life example. We'll select Hotjar heatmaps, which is a product well known in the industry, and we'll do an exercise on how to define the actionable metrics for this product for every of the 5 stages. Let's get to it. Acquisition. Acquisition is the stage where you attract anonymous users and try to convert them into known users. So, the question that will define your primary metric is, what is your customer acquisition strategy? Are you trying to get free trials or free signups? Maybe you are on a freemium business model. Or do you simply want to get people to request a demo before they can sign up to use your product? The answer to this question will become your primary metric for your acquisition stage. For the secondary metrics, you'll need to answer the following question. What are the actions that lead users from getting anonymous to become known users? Well, they need to visit your website, they need to sign up, to show sign-up intent, like visit pricing, or start the registration process, download the resource, or subscribe to newsletter. These are the metrics that we defined for the Hotjar example. Let's get to the next one, activation. The onboarding process is probably one of the most important processes of your business. And it's because it's a make or break process for your growth. A lot relies on this process. So how well you define it will have a huge impact on the results you get out of it. The onboarding process is the process that takes people from signing up to your product to experiencing the promise of your product for the first time. So that's why the answer the question for your primary metric is, what is the promise of your product? What Hotjar is, create heat maps. That's what Hotjar heat maps is promising you. Easy, right? For the secondary metrics, what are the steps a user needs to take to get to experience the promise of your product? For Hotjar, they need to create an account, install an embed code, test that code was installed, and preview a heat map. People need to go through these steps in order to end up creating a heat map that works for them. The beauty of this framework is that all these questions are business questions, not data questions. And most of the people in your team will answer the same. And that's why it will be very easy to get them aligned around that. Let's get to the next stage, revenue, where you want to start making money from your known onboarded users and make more money from your existing customers. So the question for the primary metric, how will you make money from new users? If you're Hotjar, they need to buy your product. That's easy, right? For the secondary metrics, how will you make more money from your existing customers? Well, for Hotjar, people can upgrade or increase usage, or if they are an agency, add a client. That's the way that Hotjar makes more money from existing customers. Again, it will be very easy. It's very easy to answer these questions because they are business questions, and all the business people, all the business teams inside your organizations will find it easy to get them answered. Retention. We got people onboarded. We maybe got them even starting to pay, but we want them to use our product for the long term. We want them to be engaged with our product and receive value from it and pay us for it. So the question for the primary metric, what are the main reasons your customers are using your product? Well, for Hotjar is analyze heat maps. For the secondary metrics, what are the actions that help people achieve their reasons? Well, they need to click heat maps, scroll them, add notes, share them with colleagues, download them. That's how they analyze a heat map, right? Last stage, but not least, because it's a very important stage, which has a huge impact on growth, is the referral one. How do you get people to invite more users to use your product? Depending on your business model, it can be about inviting more users in the same account or inviting users to create their own accounts. So this is, for the primary metric, this is the question that you should ask. How can a user generate a new seat in your product? Well, for Hotjar, they invite a new referrer. What's the secondary metric? How do you find the secondary metrics? Well, you answer the following question. What are the actions that people need to take to get more people to use your product? Well, they need to send invitations, they need to add new team members, and so on. Without the secondary metrics being met, the primary metric will never be achieved. So it's all down to 10 questions that will define your metrics. And 5 of them will define your primary metrics. So my suggestion would be go into a meeting room right now and start asking, what is your customer acquisition strategy? What is the promise of your product? How will you make money from your new users? What are the main reasons your customers are using your product? And how can a user generate a new seat in your product? It will probably take less than 10 minutes to agree on the answers on these questions. And once you have them, you have your actionable metrics. They come up defining a funnel that will take people from being visitors, anonymous users, to creating an account, to being onboarded, and to paying, and the process, which is an ongoing effort in driving more engagement. And you'll have here the primary metric from retention and referrals. The next step is to make sure that you align your whole team around the metrics. What team is responsible for growing each one of them? Is there a person that is responsible for addressing a specific metric? Where will the metrics be tracked? What are the strategies to grow them? Well, let's cover these questions in the next slides. But first, how important is for your team to be aligned? Well, it turns out that a report from Forrester Research discovered that teams that are aligned are much more likely to generate growth in a company, while teams that are not aligned, the chances are that those companies will see a decrease instead of growth. Scary, right? The same research shows up that only 8% of companies say that marketing and sales teams are aligned. Think of it, they didn't even include product teams here, which are crucial for product-led growth, right? So getting your team aligned around those metrics is crucial. And the first step you've already established. You have them defined, and you have a framework which will not create a lot of debates and discussions inside organizations. With every company we worked with, most of them got the answers to those questions in minutes, not in hours, and not after multiple meetings. Now that we have the stages and we have the metrics, we'll need to define which team is responsible to grow every single stage. So, for example, acquisition will be the job of marketing and sales, while activation will be a mix between marketing, product, sales, and customer success. The onboarding process is actually something that every team inside the company will need to work on. Now that you know the teams that work on the metrics, you will need to define who on each team owns the primary metrics. So, for example, for Hotjar, we defined that for activation, creating the first heat map is the primary metric. We will need to find a responsible inside the company, a person that monitors that metric, makes sure that it's tracked correctly at any given time, and his personal goal inside the company is to increase that metric. To empower the people that are responsible of the metrics, we need to make sure that we give them good data. So where will the metrics be tracked? Our recommendation is that primary metrics are always tracked in your own system, at least. So you will have a single source of truth for them, which is 100% accurate and precise. You don't want any errors in your primary metrics. So have them in your own database. For the secondary metrics and also the primary metrics as backups, you can use multiple tools for each stage. For acquisition, it will most likely be Google Analytics and HubSpot and AdWords and Facebook Analytics. For activation, services like InnerTrends, Mixpanel, or FullStory are designed to cover these sections. Now that we have the tools, you should also create an inventory of what are all the strategies for every single stage that you can use in order to meet the targets of your goals. For acquisition, you can go into inbound marketing, paid advertising, cold outreach, and every strategy, every tactic that you can apply to get more visitors to discover your service. For the onboarding processes, workflows, checklists, in-app messages, trigger emails, deep sequences, and so on, that you can deploy in order to meet those goals. One of the most important strategies for every single stage is product updates. That's the one that will give you the biggest impact. And that's where product-led growth comes from. But I would never jump into product upgrades from the very beginning. I would use all the strategies available to validate ideas, hypotheses that come from different team members. And once you discover a strategy, you then go and deploy it as a product update. For the onboarding process, for example, you might want to try a checklist or walkthrough first. You see the impact of that. And if that works, the question will be, what update should we do inside the product so that that walkthrough is not necessary anymore? It becomes intuitive and people do it without telling them to do it. Now that you have an inventory of strategies, you should also create an inventory of tools that you can deploy for every single stage in order to implement those strategies. For example, for retention, you could deploy tools like Intercom or App Queues to get people engaged with specific features of your product. You can get inner trends to identify when people lose engagement with your product or increase their engagement levels. And you can use Segment to sync all that data to automation marketing tools. Now, we defined the actionable metrics. We got a person that is responsible for the metrics, and we empowered them with the tools and the strategies that they can deploy to move those metrics. The next step is to track your progress in meeting the goals for your primary and secondary metrics. So the best way to do that is to set up a company and a team scorecards. This process works really well with OKRs, objective key results. We actually use them like that because it's very easy to track. And we set up basically a person responsible for every metric, and we establish a goal for that person. We then do weekly calls to see what changed in our primary metrics in order to reach our goals. We go into the strategies or the actions, what is going to be deployed. All the teams are aligned on the actions that need and the changes that need to be done inside the product based on this framework, because we know what's the most important goal that we need to reach, and we know that's way how we prioritize the actions that we need to deploy. We have a company scorecard where the top management gets to report. And then we set a team scorecard with the secondary metrics for every team responsible for a specific metric. That way, all the teams will be aligned to reach the same goal in the end. Last but not least, you'll need to identify opportunities in your data. You will know what are the primary metrics, what are the tools that you use to track them, what are the strategies you can deploy, who's the responsible person. But now that responsible person needs to make a decision. What should I do next in order to move my metrics? What should I focus on? When they will view the full funnel from visit to payment and the process of engagement and referral, they will quickly identify what's the area where they lose most customers and users. That becomes the biggest growth opportunities. But they can deploy data science in order to dig deep and identify opportunities in those sections on how and what changes need to be done inside the product in order to move them. So, the best thing you can do is to ask the right questions. We present here examples of questions for every single stage that you can start asking right now from your data and try to get those questions answered to give you deep insights into how and what needs to change inside your product and acquisition strategy. For example, for the acquisition stage, a great question is, What is the influence of the pricing page on the decision to sign up? Or what are the paths that people take during the sign-up process? What is the end-to-end performance of a paid campaign? For activation, strong questions like, what is the typical behavior of the people that finish the onboarding process? What are the sections of the product that influence people to onboard or to drop off? How long does it take to onboard new users? Are emails influencing them to be successful or not? Revenue. What are the most used features before upgrading to a paid plan? How does customer support influences users to buy a subscription? These questions will lead to answers that will tell you exactly what you need to focus on. Retention. One of the most important questions under retention is, what is the difference in actions between onboarded users that return and those that churn? Getting the answer to this question will give you what we call the North Star metric, because the question to this answer will tell you what are the actions that people that reached the promise of your business need to do in order to stick to your product for the long term and become long-term customers. Most of these questions you cannot get easily from a data analytics service. You might require a data scientist or a data science platform. For the referral section, how many accounts invite a second user to join? How many of those that were invited ended up joining? What is the influence of emails of getting second users to join? How long does it take for someone to refer a second user? What are the features that are mostly used before referring a second user? Those are the questions that, once answered, will give you the weapons that you need in order to fix the problems in your growth and move your primary metrics up. At Inner Trends, we focus on making it very easy to get answers to the questions above by simply making them available to you in a repository. You come and you select the questions that you want to get answered, you click on them, and they will process the data you have in order to provide ready-to-use answers. You don't need to be a data scientist to get them answered. To give you a head start with the actionable metrics, we created a spreadsheet that you can access by going to bit.ly/PLS Actionable Metrics. You'll have there a framework where you can fill in the primary metrics, secondary metrics, and the teams and persons that are responsible for each one of them, and a way to monitor that on a weekly or a regular basis. Now it's time to get to work. It was a pleasure to present you the Actionable Metrics framework, and if you need to learn more about it, please visit innertrends.com/product-led summit. Thank you for joining my presentation.